and welcome to Glasgow in 2024 Presents. My name is Esther MacCallum-Stewart and I'm the chair of the Glasgow in 2024 Worldcon bid, and I'm really excited to be introducing you to our online events. I hope you enjoy this event, and if you do, why not take a moment to see what else we have coming up online at glasgow2024.org. All of our events are broadcast live, but if you want to watch or listen again, you can find them all online at our YouTube channel. Please feel free to join in the conversation on social media. We'll be using the hashtag #GIN2024 across Instagram, Twitter and Facebook. And you can also find us there at Glasgow in 2024. If you would like to become a supporter of the bid, you can do so at glasgow2024.org/pre-support. Or if you want to volunteer to get involved, then please check out our volunteer page on our website. We can't currently be together, but we do hope we can bring a little bit of the Glasgow 2024 spirit and joy to you wherever you are in the world. Enjoy the event and thank you. Okay, oh my goodness, yet less roots. Less roots, less pandemic terror. That was a day when I had to record that. Hello everybody, hello and welcome to this evening's Glasgow in 2024 event. I'm Esther MacCallum-Stewart and I'm the bid chair of Glasgow in 2024. And I'm really excited this evening because we have a very on-theme panel discussion chat with the Glasgow, can't even say the name of my own bid. The Glasgow.
It's a good start.
I know it is, isn't it? Yeah, the Glasgow Writers Circle. And what I'd love to do and what I'm going to do this evening is kind of like, I feel like when you go to conventions, this is a panel that is often there. There's often a panel of like, what is a writer's circle and how does it happen and how does it kind of work? But actually, I realized that I don't know. I work at a university, so I write a lot, but I write on my own, and I don't have any experience of this at all, and I'm really, really fascinated. And I've spent the last week or so cramming myself full of all of your writing, so my head is full of your words. They're rushing around my head. I've got kind of Scottish vampires and football commentary and strange rituals to bring the rain, and I've got pictures of the Botanic roof, and it's just, yeah, I'm just really kind of fascinated. So let's get going. I'm going to ask you to introduce yourselves in the order that I can see you on the screen. So Beth, would you like to introduce yourself first?
All right, I'm Beth, and I've been coming to the Glasgow SF Writers Circle, the Gsfwc, rolls off the tongue, since about 2016. I have written a novel called Ada King under the writing name E.M. Faulds. So if you're wondering who E.M. Faulds is, it's also called Beth Faulds. And as Beth Faulds, I also hosted a podcast called Speculative Spaces, and I used quite a few of the writers from the circle as my early guinea pigs. And finally, I have done a little bit of editing for the charity anthology that we just produced for COVID relief last year called Flotation Device.
Fantastic. I'm going to be asking questions about that, but not yet. Okay, Cameron, you are next with the bookcase I'm sure everybody is trying to look at.
Well, yes. Strategically placed books up there, yeah. Yeah, I'm Cameron Johnston. I write darker fantasy, and I've been going to the Writers' Circle for 11 years now, which just blows my mind every time I think back to 2010 when I first went along. So I've written The Traitor God, God of Broken Heaven, and yeah, thoroughly enjoyed all of them.
Could you just repeat that? Because I had a futz on the line, so just repeat what it is that you wrote. I got The Traitor,
oh, right.
But I didn't get any further.
The Traitor God, God of Broken Things, and The Maleficent Seven, which you can see up behind me there.
Fantastic, thank you. Yeah, quick, everybody. Get off watching and go and start reading. But yes, not before we've introduced Neil. So Neil.
So we're doing I'm Neil, and I've been coming along to the Glasgow Writers Circle since the RW. I'm Neil. I've been coming along to the Glasgow Writers Circle since 1993, I think. I think it was the end of 93. It's that long ago, I can't remember now. So that's a while. I've written some books. I wrote a book called The Moon King, which is a novel. Its sequel, Queen of Clouds, is coming out next year at Easter, hopefully Easter card. I've 2 collections of short stories, The Ephemera and Secret Language. And what else? Novella, The Memoirist. And I've done a bit of editing as well with Cameron and Elaine Gallagher. I co-edited the Writer Circle's 30th anniversary anthology, 30 Years of Rain, that's the one there. Thank you, Propmeister. And with Andrew J. Wilson, I co-edited a book called Nova Scotia, a New Scottish Speculative Fiction, which came out for the last time we had a WorldCon in Glasgow, and ended up on the shortlist for the World Fantasy Award, which was quite a nice thing. So, that's
well
me.
done. Yeah, and I'm going to be talking about some of those anthologies later, but I love the synchronicity that's happened with WorldCons being in Glasgow and the publication of things. And
you can call it synchronicity, but I might call it marketing.
Okay, yeah, well, yeah, that's also
we
fine.
We can talk about it later on if you've got questions.
But yes, no, I will definitely I was going to say shill for for the future, but yes, I'll try and think of a more subtle word. Okay, so all of you obviously are quite established members, and I found it really interesting reading the introductions to anthologies. I'm always a bit of a kind of like, I love those introductions. They're always so interesting. They're so telling about what's about to happen. And I want to talk about some of the changes in the anthologies that you've created as we go through the panel. But can you just tell me a little bit about your first impressions of, let's go back in a time machine, of the first sessions that you actually attended? You know, what were they like? Because I get the impression from the anthology there's been a lot of change from the sort of 30 years ago to what you might experience now, and obviously COVID has presumably changed things. So yeah, what can I actually expect? I'm going to pick on, let's go backwards. Neil.
Okay, so a bit of history for you. The Writer Circle originally came about because the science fiction and science writer Duncan Lunan was running a course on creative writing, creative SF writing at Glasgow University, and the first year kind of or so, it went well enough that the people who attended the course wanted to continue on kind of looking at each other's stories and critiquing it. So it was a natural extension of that activity. And Duncan's class continued for a few years. Now I attended it, I think, several years later, maybe 6 or 7 years after it started. And the circle was one of those things where you've got the gateway drug, but now you get invited a little backhander, a little introduction to the hard stuff. So so I went along to the circle based on Duncan's kind of recommendation. Is if you're interested and you're enjoying doing it, then come along and see what it's like. So I turned up one night. I think it must have been late in 1993. That's my memory, because I was quite quick about getting my first story critiqued, which I do know was in January or February 1994. Right, so I think it must have been late in 93, and I turned up and they were critiquing a story, an early story by the reasonably well-known writer Michael Cobley. You might know Mike. Does some terrific space opera work now, some really big, expansive, great ideas. And this is a little story which I will never forget, because I had never read anything like it. It utterly blew my mind. I didn't understand it. To this day, I'm not convinced Mike understood it. but it was just so vivid and so full of imagination. It was just bursting with imagination, and I just went, "Yeah, this is me. I'm home. This is
Well, do you know
what I
what?
want
That's
to be doing."
all these years later, so he did something right.
Yeah, right. Yeah, well, but that's the thing. I mean, one of, without getting away from the topic, the point that the opening point, one of the things the Writer Circle allows you to do is experiment and try things out. And that was definitely, I think, an experimental piece for me, but it was really good. And I was just blown away by the imagination and the quality of the writing. It was just, wow, I want to be able to do that. So I thought I'd stick around and learn how.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I noticed that in the reading as well, like everything from one of the stories, there's a description of what's obviously a sort of earpiece, and it's called an earp. And then it's called an EP, and just that lovely, like, playing with language like that to just make that really simple but very science fictional term. I can really understand how that kind of, you can see that evocative language in all of your writing as well. So, yeah.
Well, that's good to know, because I think that joy of playing with language has definitely been something that was there at the beginning when I started. The other thing I think that was there, and hopefully still is there, it was just a really welcoming environment for a young guy who had only been writing for a few months, really. Just playing with it, and then within about a year I wanted to make it something I really wanted to do with my life. So yeah,
brilliant. Cameron, what about you?
Funnily enough, Duncan Luna played part in this as well. So it was about, I think it was midway through 2010. I'd been writing for, since I was young, really. Little bits and pieces, not really knowing what I'm doing, not really writing anything good, I have to say, because I have gone back and looked at it, and that was a mistake. But it's nice to see how far you've come as well. But after a couple of novels I finished and didn't know how to fix them, I decided I'll try and find a writers group and try and improve my writing, and stumbled across this group. I think it was probably Neil I emailed. Went along, sat in a couple of sessions, thought there's a lot of really good advice here. I want to get better. And you know what? It was nice people, and it was also fun. Because I wasn't really in the mood for something really formal and really, you kind of imagine the sort of thing. I mean, but it was very friendly. It was a very friendly atmosphere, and I thought, I'm going to take a chance and put my first story in. Quite nervous about it. It was like a space opera, a short story called Silence of the Void, and Duncan Lunan was there, and he's a actual proper astronomer.
Oh wow! Okay, yeah.
So let's point out all the things wrong with this story. Why are the stars twinkling when you're not in an atmosphere? And I'm sitting going, oh yeah. And then someone gets sucked out of the spaceship and then immediately freezes. And it's like, no. That's Hollywood, my friend. Doesn't happen like that. And I was like going, oh, right, okay. So lots of really good information. Essentially kind of ripping the story to pieces, but in a very good way. So it makes you think about things. And I have taken that forward, where I'm writing something, then I look at it with a more critical eye. Sometimes you hear other people's voices in your head going, what about that? And you're going, yeah, you're right.
I think actually, that the ability to have other people's expertise as well, that's really... that must have felt really exciting, as you say, like yes, it is criticism, but it's also criticism of somebody who actually knows,
absolutely. Because I wrote a few things and I thought, hey, they're pretty good, but they could be better. I just have I don't know how to fix it. And sometimes I don't know what's wrong with it. And sometimes all it takes is one other person just to point out one little thing that's totally obvious to them, and you've totally missed it because it's your story. And it's easier to critique other people's work.
Yeah, and again, from what I've sort of seen in really, really quite a sort of interesting way as well. So Beth, was it a late night shift in a coffee shop that drove you through the night to the writers group?
No, but thank you for referencing
Beth's short story, which I've just finished reading and absolutely loved. So yeah,
thank you. So no, I actually got into the circle via Twitter. So I hadn't met Duncan Lunan. The only time I met Duncan, I think, was at someone's wedding from one of the circle writers. And so that shows you how close we all kind of get as a group. But I was on Twitter. I was looking for Glasgow writers in general, just to kind of, because I am Australian by birth. I hate to say it. I'm not a native. But I moved up here and I was like, well, I might as well try and reach out and find some people. And I found Hal Duncan, who likes a bit of Twitter, he does. And he had in his biography a link to this thing called Gsfwc. And I'm like, what was that? Just clicked on it. I was like, oh, okay. I wonder if these people take strange random people into their fold. And I went through to the website, checked it all out, and emailed Neil. And then it was all very welcoming. And the first meeting was a person's story was being credited, because the first time you come along, you don't get access to the story beforehand. You just get to see how it works.
Of course, yeah.
Which is a confusing experience, because you can hear all the things talked around the story, and you don't get to see the story, but you kind of get a really good idea by the end of it. If there's enough people there, you kind of get to sum it up in your mind. And then I got a copy of the story at the end, because someone had a paper copy they'd printed out. And I was like, oh, okay, this is really good, and decided to stay and had a few things critted eventually. I take things very personally when it comes to criticism. I've had to learn how to roll with the punches a little bit, I must admit, but it has been so useful to my just being able to craft a story, being able to look at someone else's thing, critique someone else's story is actually, I think, more useful than getting your own story critiqued, because you can it's, you got that distance, you got that emotional distance. You don't take things personally when you're critiquing someone else's. You can feel free to just pull out all the stitching and just go for it. Whereas when it's your own, it's like a little bit more, it's a bit precious. So
my child, my sweet child.
and now it's moved online. We can actually do we can technically do more meetings, because there's not the restriction of space, it's just time then. But unfortunately, the pandemic's done a number on quite a few people's creativity.
Absolutely.
I mean, I've noticed it more generally in people that tend to write long series fiction. This year is definitely missing book 10 or book 5, and I mean, it's completely understandable, I think. But so I'm wondering, you sort of like skirted around this a little bit and sort of said it's incredibly useful, and maybe you have to learn a bit of resilience, but also there's something really kind of invigorating about sort of presenting your story, and there's a little bit of kill your darlings and information. But how do you actually go about sort of supporting each other? Is there an individual moment? I mean, I think Cameron's given me one already, but is there an individual moment about something in one of the pieces of writing that you've done that you've thought, wow, there's such a eureka moment there, that's really kind of clicked for me? I think it was either you or Cameron, it was either you or Neil that was saying the first time you actually submitted something, it was incredibly nerve-wracking. It was this whole kind of process. And I wondered if there were any kind of really sort of standout moments. So
do you know what? It's actually the end of the session that stands out to me. Because when you're getting your first story critiqued by, I think it was about a dozen people, it's a bit overwhelming.
Yeah.
And then at the end of it, you get a chance to either, add additional comments or rebut anything or explain what you're trying to do. And, I didn't really know what I was doing, so I didn't really have those. But at the end of it, they took me out down the pub, bought me a pint, and then we sat down and discussed other stories, discussed my story. I found it very kind of totally calmed me down, totally disarmed any kind of hurt feelings I might have had. Yeah. So it's all kind of done in a very constructive way as well.
Yeah.
Which, you can say something's just, oh, that's rubbish, which that doesn't help anyone. But if you can say this doesn't work because of X, Y, and Z, and maybe you can fix it by doing these other things, then it was all kind of done in that kind of style. So it was never argumentative or picking on someone or anything like that. It was it was all like it was like a good group of friends almost helping each other. Rather than anything which I really appreciated that whole atmosphere that was created. And I think a little bit of socialization afterwards played a big part in that.
Yeah. One of the things I often say to my students when they get feedback from other students, because they're not necessarily very good at actually giving criticism, they'll always say it's great, which isn't actually very useful. But it's also like, listen for those questions afterwards. Like, what are people talking about in the pub? What triggered them to then talk about X writer? Or so that sounds like a really kind of, and that's a really kind thing to do as well. You have what sounds like, even with a group of friends, a very nerve-wracking thing for you and a very personal thing, and then it's kind of come on now, and
when you go to a few sessions in a row, it's not just you in the hot seat as well.
yeah. Beth, how about you?
Well, I didn't have a really necessarily one standout moment, because for me it's an aggregative kind of process. It accumulates over the time where you start to go, okay, the shapes are kind of making more sense now. So, because sometimes everyone has a different opinion on a story. Even if they're saying roughly the same thing, they have their own things that they really want to talk about this story. So you kind of do learn that there isn't one answer, but you kind of get, I think it was Neil who said the other day recently, was the emotional stepping stones was one of his phrases that used that really clicked with me. And I'm like, yes, okay. And you can see sometimes, okay, there's a gap there. That's what I need to work on next. So that's the thing for me. I mean, I have had some right shreddings in the circle. I'm not gonna lie. It has happened, and the pint afterwards really does take the sting out.
Yeah. Yeah, I can imagine. And yes, I mean, I see this with students again. Their vulnerability afterwards is is something it's a really good way to manage it. So yeah, and it doesn't even have to be an alcohol drink. It's a there pat. We're friends. So Neil, are you on the no stand up moment, or are you on the there was definitely a thing? Like where
do you know what? There probably was a thing. But it was probably long enough ago that I can't really remember the details, to be honest, Esther. I would say the things that the things that happened to me were where I learned that it was all right for people to just tell me I was blatantly wrong about something factual. We don't tend to say you're blatantly wrong about a creative choice. Creative choices are all choices, and you can make them all work if you get the right alchemy to make that thing work. But there can be a factual thing. I don't think I'd ever been in, I was in my early 20s when I joined the circle. I don't think I'd ever been in a situation at that point in my life where someone had just sat across the table from me and said, this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong. You have to change this, have to change that, have to change that. And then give me, because such and such a person was an expert in that field or knew a bit more about it than I did, give me excellent reasons, a series of excellent reasons to back up your this is wrong with the why of the whole thing. I think one of the things I've learned, one of the reasons I've been here nearly 30 years is that I've learned a lot of things along the way, and a lot of things I've learned have actually been life skills. Learning how to critique someone in a factually blunt, but hopefully gentle and encouraging way is something you learn from other people. You learn from other people doing it around you. When you get, sometimes in groups like ours, you can get someone coming in who doesn't read the room, doesn't read the vibe or the way that our group tends to do it, and doesn't see the benefits of the way we tend to do that, and just goes the wrong way and can be a bit roughshod or a bit confrontational, or acerbic, or one of those words.
Science fiction writers, surely not.
But and something that you have to take them aside and say, what, really, that's just a bit on the nose. I think someone said something earlier on that's making me think of a thing that we used to say in the circle. You always critique the story, never the author. Yeah. And I think it was probably Cameron who was talking about his first experience. That's really important, because all we are is taking your words on the page and have a look at it and going, there's some really good stuff in here. It's full of wonders. It's telling a good story. I like the characters. There's just something that happens in the plot. It doesn't quite work for me. So that's why we took it all apart, and then gave you hopefully some tools to look at it again and go, I could rebuild it a slightly different way. I could, I qualified at uni as an engineer, so I think of things being in an engineering workshop. So it's like if you take a car and put it up on the ramps, and you just chop the back end off and stick the back end of a pickup truck on instead, which does the job, because you're trying to make it do, maybe a Ferrari in the front end, fair dues, but it'll go fast, but at least you'll be able to carry all the emotional baggage that you're trying to make it carry as well, rather than this tiny little back seat, it's big enough for Pekingese and nothing else.
Can you tell us a writer?
Right. Writers don't get to get Ferrari pickup truck hybrid cars. That's just not one of the things we get. But we can make them ourselves in our heads. But in terms of things that influenced me, there are lots of moments where you go, do you know what? It's a learning moment for myself. And one of those early learning moments was, I need to have learning moments. That's an important thing.
Yeah.
And that was one of the fundamental things that changed me as a person and made me the kind of person that wants to stick around in writers' groups for 30 years. Because I really, really love seeing someone come who's got skill and imagination and a real drive. Really important thing is a real drive to want to write and to have their stories done.
Yeah.
And then
go on.
Slowly get better and just improve bit by bit. That's a real pleasure for me. Yeah,
and no, I think that must be really exciting as well. And even if it's very gradual, there's a kind of there's a real sort of kind of joy about that that's really interesting. And actually, so this is something that all of you kind of mentioned in the blurbs that you sent to me beforehand, and also in kind of some of the things that were really kind of integral to the group. So Vince Doherty taught me the most amazing phrase, which is not to say, I really hate Doctor Who and think it should be taken off the air. You just say, it's not my fandom. Because what? That's what I think. And that's a lot of people really do. There's people hissing, watching us right now. but it isn't my fandom. And that's why I don't like it. And that doesn't mean that it isn't completely wonderful for other people. And I realizing that was actually quite a big revelation to me. And I wonder how there's kind of two parts to this question. The first thing is that reading the stuff that you've all produced, both the three of you and the circle in general, they are wildly different. Like, they go from these kind of really very spiritual pieces of writing to poetry to quite surrealist to dopey tales about girls who discovered magic machines that make anything possible in weird castles in the middle of nowhere, and then it becomes a story about something else. And yeah, the commentary on a football match, they're so different. How do you kind of deal with that when you do come across something that firstly isn't your fandom, but also how do you encourage that in the group? Because I noticed, I mean, Beth, you're saying I'm Australian, but the voices are Glasgow, and those voices are from everywhere. You know, they really kind of show up as that, from that very, very rich Scottish language to really minute descriptions of Glasgow to much, much bigger concepts, you know. And yeah, the people that are drawn in are so clearly absolutely hugely diverse. So yeah, so how do you deal with the kind of not my fandom, and how do you when you're critiquing something, but also how do you encourage that new voice which is coming through so strongly in flotation devices?
Well, first of all, I think that when you say not my fandom, it's still possible to really look at a story from a different genre or a different voice or different perspective than you usually enjoy reading, and say, well, it's not my cup of tea, but I can see there's a good story behind it.
Yeah.
And that's the point. Stories are, I'm not going to say they're universal, because that's kind of a Western-centric point of view in that structures can be very different across the world. But generally speaking, you can sort of see the same things, whether it's someone who's writing from a perspective of a Glaswegian who is an everyday kind of person, to writing someone on the other edge of space, you know. And I came in as more of a science fiction writer than a fantasy writer, and then over the time I've read all these beautiful, wonderful stories, and I've kind of started trying my hand at fantasy and different things too. And like I'm not much of a horror reader, but when someone's done an interesting skin-crawling horror story, and you know, I think you can appreciate that, even if it's not your general thing, your go-to thing. And it's all a case of saying, well, does this stand on its own merits? And that's how you I think you have, and it really, I was going to say, this is one of the things that you could have a danger with a writing group, of there being a kind of homogenization. If everyone's the same, writing the same, thinks the same things are what is a merit in a story. Whereas if you've got a circle that's been going as long as this one has, and has such a lot of members who are so diverse in their viewpoints, then I think it kind of it negates that danger quite a bit. You don't want groupthink in a circle. You don't want to say this is the only way you must write a story. You can say this works for me. And for the flotation device anthology, the point was there was a rough theme behind it, which was, does this give me some sort of uplift? Now that's an interesting kind of thing to say, because obviously some of the stories were not what you generally think of as uplifting, but the point being that the life was hard at that point. It still is quite hard, but at that point no one knew what was going on, so it's, you know, whatever, something that can literally take you off to other worlds, so you can, you know, drift away for a bit. And that's where the title came from.
Yeah, I really love the transition from 30 years of water, which I'm like, oh no, did I get the name right there? Which I
30 years of rain. 30 years of rain. Glasgow.
It was rain. It was coming down to going up. So the rain comes down, but the flotation device buoys you up, and I really loved that transition. I thought that was, and then one of the previous anthologies was called Shipbuilding, which is obviously so central to the Clyde, and you know, like obviously we've had our piece of Ian Clarke art, which was shipbuilding on the Clyde as well. So it felt like this wonderful kind of theme of like water moving in different directions was like, yeah, I love that. I thought that was really fantastic. So yeah, and the diversity that I felt like I love the sort of the early entrance stories, which I did feel there was kind of hope in them, you know, this kind of wonderful story of orcs and people discovering commonalities with each other, in a really traditional fantasy story, which has got some, I started reading it and I was like, oh, there's some really ableist language here, and it's deliberate because that character is horrible. And then it goes away. It's only mentioned, it's like one paragraph, and then you're like, oh, this person is super, super duper awful. But then moving very quickly into Shona Kinsella's story about a quest to return water to the world as well, like really wonderful. I think I'm going to move on to the anthology because we've started talking about it. So you put it together in a week.
Yep.
How? and Beth, obviously you did the editing on this. Was it a collaborative process? How much? I have questions. Thank goodness I'm moderating. I mean, yeah. How did you do this, and how did everybody else contribute to it as well?
Well, I'm a web designer, and I also self-published the first novel. And those two things, I just thought to myself, because a lot of people were putting out COVID freebies at that point. That was the big thing, was that they were putting their trunk stories together. Each single writer was doing a little anthology and popping it off for free for something to, for people to read and feel better about their lives and about lockdowns and horrible things. And I just thought, well, it would be good to use some of that to, you know, put forward to charity. And what we can do is write, and we can build things that are nice for people to read, but also then use that to help alleviate difficulties for some people. Yeah. So that was the reasoning. And then the week thing, it's just like, well, surely it can be done. That was it. It's like you've all got stories, right? Yeah, just bung them over, and we'll see how fast we can get this thing turned around. And it kind of actually happened. I honestly, it went in a bit of a blur, to be honest, so I'm not going to be able to tell you exactly how.
There was also an element of the sooner you can get it out there, so you can be earning money for your charities. So that seemed, because it seemed to be important at the time, because everything was stretched at that point. You know, our infrastructure wasn't prepared for what was happening to us, and everybody needed some cash. So so that was I think that was one of the drivers, was let's just make something as good as we can and get it out to people, and hopefully they'll pay us some dosh.
And it was all digital, so you know, like that, you got to exploit what you've got there in the digital technology, because you know, okay, a print magazine would be very pretty, and a print book's a very lovely thing to have, but that just really drags the process, that slows the process right down when you've got a typeset and all that. So
I think also, certainly in kind of early days, I didn't want to touch things. You know, I wanted to, it was okay because it's my Kindle, you know, like, and actually that really sort of speaks to the time as well. So I think very kind of appropriate medium. You know, I'm constantly amazed how we're maybe not used to talking to each other like this, but we've certainly grown acclimatized to it, you know. Zoom updates itself every week or so to make things slightly sharper, and then MST catches up afterwards, you know. So yeah, you kind of touched on this before. So did you meet during COVID, or you know, how did you kind of adapt processes, or you know, what happened? I was going to say one of you at the bottom. This is like when I point at my students and I'm like, No.
Well, on my
What
on
makes
my
you
stream, I
this?
went top. We recognize. I mean, as soon as wait till the ambulance goes past on Great Western Road. I'm on the highway to the Royal Infirmary, so we get ambulances a lot. I think looking back, the first lockdown happened really pretty fast.
Yeah.
And we just said, well, let's take it. You know, we meet in a church session room, and we liaised with people who run that room and said, well, you know, we can't do anything. Let's just keep in touch, and we'll see what we can do about getting back to meeting. In the meantime, everyone was going, well, you could use Discord, you could use Zoom. There's this new thing called Zoom, nobody had heard of at that point. You could try, I think we tried Google Hangouts first, and tried that for a bit, and it didn't work because it didn't have, it's what we had, you know.
Yeah.
So we tried various things and eventually settled on Zoom, which was the platform that seemed to be able to handle the number of people. I think quite quickly we got on to going, do you know what, let's just buy a subscription for it, because the time limited thing wasn't working for us. We need more than 40 minutes or 30 minutes or whatever it used to be. And it hasn't worked for quite a lot of our members. Quite a lot of our members either just don't, well, there can be access issues as well. You know, there can be kind of disability issues, but there's also people are a lot of us are working on something like Zoom or Teams or something like that all day long.
It's hour 6 for me today.
Yeah. And they just don't do, they just can't face it, you know, they can't face it. So there was that element of it. So yes, it's disrupted what we do, but as Beth alluded to earlier on, it allows us a little bit of license to explore and see what we can do to make the best of medium. So I would say we have fewer stories to critique.
Yeah.
And we tend to organize ourselves by how much volume we've got. We've got quite a lot of members. And when we meet in real life, quite a lot of at one point there was enough stories every week or every 2 weeks to run every fortnightly, and then we were just queuing up. We're just queuing up. So well, let's go weekly. So we went weekly, and that was going really well. And then the pandemic hit and the lockdown hit, and everyone just stopped writing. So we have weekly meetings, but we started doing other things. You know, this year, 2021, we said, what else can we? Let's. One of the problems is we're not writing. We all get thrown out of our writing routines because a lot of people write at lunchtime at work or on the way to work and on the commute or whatever, and all that was taken away. So let's do other things. So we sometimes do kind of write-in events. We've got an empty session where a bunch of us will just get together on Zoom and just use that for 2 hours of writing, and a bit of chat about what you have to be writing, you know. And that seems to be going quite well. People seem to like that because it's kicking them into the actual I do enjoy doing this, and it's something that I'd like to. So a lot of people seem to be glad that that's a thing we do. So I think we'll keep on doing that. If and when we go back to, I'm pretty sure we will go back to meeting in real life again. But you know, maybe we'll meet every 2 weeks in real life and every 2 weeks on Zoom. I don't know. Maybe the options are open. There's lots of things we can do.
I mean, it does give a lot of people a lot of accessibility as well. People that can't travel for one reason or another. Or
it opens up access for some people where it closes down access. So we've got a couple of members who are deaf and can't use these kind of tools because it just doesn't work for them for their particular hearing aids or whatever. So I definitely we want to get back and get the people who can't for whatever reason use Zoom or get on with Zoom back into their enjoying their writing again. But I think I can see us, we haven't actually talked about this, but I can see us staying online partially as well.
Yeah, I think that kind of the pros and cons thing is is fascinating, you know, certainly from teaching. Some of my classes, much better. Some of them, no.
Yeah.
So we're having a couple of questions on the chat, Beth. So I know flotation devices isn't currently available, but are there any plans to either publish it again or publish any of the stories in it? And also, are you able to let us know what the charities that got donated to, so that people can see those as well? But yeah, like, will it be re-released at any point, or like, what do you have?
We haven't really discussed it because we didn't. We did it very quickly. We didn't really do it as most anthologies are, with sort of, you know, periods of rights and so forth. Yeah. So everyone, you know, who had a story in it is free to use that story wherever they want and whenever they want. So whether they want to give it back to us to put it out again is something we haven't discussed. And also, you know, there was a cost overhead coming where the amount of sales were just petering out generally. So we thought there's an overhead to keeping a website up and processing things, payments and stuff like that. So but never say never. I feel like if we do bring it back, it would be lovely to have a physical copy as well, because the artwork that Jenny, who is a member of the circle, contributed to the cover, amazing, such a beautiful cover. I love it so much. So it would be really lovely to see that on a book.
It would be, yeah. As much as I like my Kindle and I like digital things, I'd really like having a copy of the anthologies and my own books on the shelf.
Yeah.
So there's quite a lot of stuff about sales during the lockdown, and it's a noted thing that even if people are reading things on Kindles, they will buy a physical copy because they want the physical copy. The amount of D&D manuals in my house, I mean, the floor hasn't fallen in yet. But it will.
And the three charities, by the way, it was Medicine Sans Frontières, and what's the food bank one called again?
The Trussell Trust.
Trussell Trust.
Yeah.
And Simon Community, which is a Glasgow-based, it helps people who have difficulty with homelessness and or, you know, poverty, which was obviously something that was extremely strained during the and the Trussell Trust is UK wide. So we're kind of going one very local, one nationwide, and one international. So kind of trying to spread the love.
Fantastic.
You can still donate to them all, so it's all good.
Well, yeah. This is why I asked.
You just don't get a book at the end, sorry.
So Ed, and I'm wondering if that's our friend Ed Fortune. If so, hello. He's asking, where's actually the best place to get updates for the Writers' Circle of things that you are actually currently writing and producing? So, as well as the Tweetverse.
I guess you know, Facebook and Twitter are we have a kind of Facebook. Is that a page, a group? I don't know what they call them anymore. They changed the definitions.
Let's change names every time.
Pretty sure it's just a page.
which is kept up to date. Both that and the Twitter are kept up to date pretty assiduously. We also have a website which is more useful for when we're meeting in real life. There haven't been any updates to that for quite a while. But you know, if we publish something new, that's where that would be. The thing about publications is, I always feel it's not one of the main thrusts of what we do is to help everyone take their stories and improve them and improve their writing craft a little bit by a little bit, to the point where they can send them out to websites and magazines and anthologies and publishers if they're novels, and sell them for real money, and that's great. I don't think we should exist primarily as a publishing arm, but every now and again there's a good reason for doing it. It's a flotation device, great reason for doing that, and it was Beth's initiative, and it was I was just so pleased that that came up, and we were able to do that. 30 Years of Rain was our 30th anniversary anthology, so it seemed
I'm
think
pretty
it's
sure
a-
that was a pub chat, wasn't it?
It
It's like,
was, yeah. I
we
think
should really do something for this.
I think a few of the
That's
older ones,
fine.
especially, looked at each other and went, and we have members who've been there since the first year, since the first meeting, and they looked at each other and went, you know what, 30 years, that's a long time.
Mm.
Oh
Yeah.
well, then. So there might
And
be
I
another
think,
one, 40 years.
you know, that's a good point as well, because sometimes having a space for process is as useful as you know, that kind of come on.
Mhm.
Again, very much so in the games industry. Like, not every game that you produce is going to be a massive hit, and in fact, students certainly don't start there. So
Yeah.
that's actually it's really heartening to hear that like it's a space for both as well. You know, that you can.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't
there
want
is
people.
another event as well that might produce an anthology coming
Might
up
there
in
Maybe.
2024.
Really? Wow.
Just saying,
What's
it
that?
could
Never,
happen.
never happened.
We should talk about that, shouldn't we?
Yeah, so you've produced an anthology for every Worldcon so far. Now, obviously, we're still a bid, but is this a promise that you will?
Well, do you know,
you will have
it's
something?
Esther, it's kind of a double promise, to be honest. I'll give you a bit of history, because the 1995 Worldcon, we produced a book, as you said before, called Shipbuilding.
Yeah.
And that was just us saying, do you know what, we should do something for this. We were all kind of pretty young and raw, and let's do it. And we got some of the Edinburgh writers, the East Coast writers, involved in that as well. And then for the 2005 Worldcon, it wasn't a writer circle initiative, but it was me and Andrew Wilson going, do you know what, shipbuilding was good, but let's kind of up the stakes. So it was a kind of wider thing, and that actually went really well. We got a really good publisher, Circlet Press, to do it, and we had a really a science fiction publisher at all, and we had a really interesting conversation with them, which was that so how do we sell it? Worldcon, there's X thousand people at it, and they'll all be interested in buying it. And they went, okay, sold. So it was as easy as that, and it sold really well for them. They were for years, so they were gobsmacked. So Andrew and I have talked, and we've also talked to a publisher just lined up for it about doing a Nova Scotia 2, which we will be casting our net throughout all of the amazing writers we've got in Scotland, and that's not just not naturalized Scottish writers. That's the people who great writers that live here now, and who are Scottish and live other places. We'll be chapping on a few doors for that. But for the writer circle point of view, we want to do one as well from our point of view and say, this is what we do. This is what we do. Here's the kind of produce, and it will have. I hope it will have the same amount of variety and bizarre juxtaposition of story by story by story as 30 Years of Rain had, because that was one of the things I loved about that.
That was one of the things we purposely wanted to do.
Neil, your camera is lagging a little bit. If you turn it off and turn it on again, you'll stop freezing.
Oh,
sorry, Cameron.
No, I was just going to say that was one of the things we purposely wanted to do when we were editing the anthology, was we wanted to try and represent the whole wide range of the sort of fiction that people are writing in the writer circle, and I think we accomplished that. Yeah.
I mean, I'm gonna ask you. Glasgow was
just give me 1 second. I'm going to try and sort something. You guys carry on.
It's having a moment, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, I always feel incredibly proud and excited when I hear things like this, and also incredibly worried because we're still a bid. we're an unopposed bid, but goodness me,
the pressure's on.
People are making travel plans to travel from Eurocon by train, and they're already writing things and they're already making things.
I've already made my arrangements to come.
I mean, I was looking at
it's about a 10-minute walk.
Post the other day, and she's making a quilt, and there's a lady called Barb who's embroidering one of our t-shirts with an armadillo on the back, and I'm just like, the creativity that's coming out of this event without it even being an event yet is just astonishing.
Well, it just
But
shows you how
really
strong the
exciting.
writers' community is in Scotland.
I think so. And I mean, I'm actually going up to Glasgow tomorrow. I don't live in Glasgow. I live halfway down in Stafford. I'll go. I can't wait. First of all, I can't wait to walk into the room and actually see some of my team. I was actually saying to Meg, who's doing the tech. Thank you, Meg. It's making me really emotional to think about it, to actually think about seeing everybody. My treasurer, I'm going to see my treasurer, and it won't be about money. I'm going to see, one of my advisors, and it's his birthday. But this actually brings me back to this idea of Scotland and Glasgow in particular. And I'm going to make this the last question before we open up to questions. So people, if you've got questions, please do type them in the text. Meg says, do the pitch for supporters. Yes, please support us. I'll chill, don't worry, I will talk about it. But yeah, like it's all support like this, but we would love if you could pre-support as well. But let's go back to Glasgow first, like in person tomorrow. And I apologize if you can hear the car alarm going off outside. I can't do anything about that. So Glasgow and Scotland really permeate your writing, even if it's not directly about Glasgow. Like, I mean, obviously I just think it's a fantastic place. I can't wait to be walking in Calvin Grove again through the park. And that moment when you get off the train and you see that wonderful station, and we're going to be having lunch in the Arches, and just wonderful. But what is it, is there anything about Glasgow in particular for you that has really helped with your writing? And Beth, I'm going to go to you first, because I know Flights of Birds is really centered around, oh my gosh, yeah. I was like, I know which bit of the necropolis that is.
Yeah, do you know what's handy if you're stuck inside and you need a reference is Google Maps Street View. It even has a street view of the necropolis. So yeah, I did sort of like need that little cue. But yeah, it's really hard to say it in words what it means to be in Glasgow, because Scotland overall is a beautiful, wonderful country. And I'm not just saying that to suck up to the Edinburgh writers who I know are watching. But no, there's something about Glasgow that has this vibe, and I can't explain it any better than just saying there's something underneath it. Yeah. It's very difficult to say, but like there's so much art and creativity in Glasgow itself, as well as if you look at all the history and so forth. I feel like a connection that is very strange. I mean, I'm probably of Scottish stock anyway, most Australians are, but just walking down the street, there's this friction. There's a friction between everything, because there's no ghettoization really in Glasgow. There's some bits that are better than others, obviously, but for the most part, you'll see the same people walking down the street. Like anyone from any social echelon, shall we say, will walk past each other on the street, and it just rubs, and then you get this kind of friction, but it's also it makes sparks. And that's all I can say, and it just makes me sound like an absolute loon, but you know what I mean, don't you?
Yeah. I know exactly what you mean. Like walking along Finnieston looking for a coffee shop, there's a smell to Glasgow, and I don't mean like stinky pavements or old chips, but sometimes that. There's Glasgow in autumn is perfect. Like, but also that kind of, it's like a live wire, just running along the ground. So yeah, Neil, how about you? Say amazing things about Glasgow. No, or terrible.
Well, if you ever wanted to know why that anthology is called 30 Years of Rain, then come to Glasgow in the autumn. That's the thing to do. And I don't mean in a bad way. You just have to get used to the fact that it rains here, and it's not always bad rain. So it can be very pleasant rain sometimes.
Yeah.
Really does. I don't know. I think I would echo what Beth says about there's a creativity element in Glasgow that I really love. I'm a musician as well, and I could operate in the cabaret circuit as well. And yeah, one of the things that drives me in life is imagination. I just love it. I love it wherever I see it, and I love the huge number of tiny little venues you can go and see an amazing band in Glasgow. I live across the road from one of the best ones, and it's one of the reasons I'm in a tiny flat and have been for 25 years. Just because I love the facility just to go out and hear what's someone doing, right? Well, that's amazing. I'm not sure I like that, but it's still amazing.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's the same with the cabaret circuit. The cabaret circuit is just absolutely full of people with great ideas and terrible ideas, but the verve to make them happen, whether they're good ideas or not. It's not always art isn't always about polish. It's so often just about just doing it, whatever it is, just going ahead and doing it. And Glasgow is very much a place where that happens for me. So. Yeah,
it's very kind of turn a corner and see something unexpected as well. You know, I'm a big Pokemon Go player. One of the really cool things about Pokemon Go is it has little Pokestops, which are, you know, have to be attached to a real life location, and so they'll take you to places that there'll be a blue plaque somewhere, or there'll be a piece of street art, or sometimes they'll just be really mundane. They'll, you know, be kind of chip shop on the corner kind of thing, but or, you know, there's 6 clocks in the town centre area because somebody wasn't having a great day there. But that's, yeah, like that kind of unexpectedness is amazing. So Cameron, was it the blacksmithing? Is it the blacksmithing?
Oh yes, it's totally a blacksmithing. I've been instructed to say.
Not so much just the fact that you do. Like, I'm so impressed.
Yeah, it's totally not that. It's the first time I've cut myself shaving in a year, and it happens to be the day I'm doing a video. Yeah, which leads me on to what's so good about Glasgow is that we don't take ourselves too seriously. I mean, one of our citywide icons is a statue with a traffic cone on it.
Yeah, Wellington.
And what I love is if you walk down any street in Glasgow, you'll get all the billboard signs outside the pubs, and they're all trying to outdo each other with jokes and things like that. For a while, Rufus T. Fireflies had a sign that said, "To the guy that comes in every day, doesn't buy anything, and leaves a big jobby for us to clean up, we see you." But I mean, again, you've got 30 years of rain. It rains a lot. You've got to have a sense of humour. I think we kind of embody that. And even when we're writing, darker fiction, a lot of the times that humour comes through. And certainly that's what I try to do. I don't like it when things are just dark. I like it to have a bit of black humour in there as well. And I think I've kind of absorbed that from Glasgow myself.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you see that in the kind of more canonical writers as well. So like, Alistair Gray and Ian Banks, like that bleak, it's just wonderful. So yeah. Okay, so I'm going to move to questions because we've got a couple come in. So Anne has asked a super practical question, which actually I think is probably going to have a bit of an answer to it. What would you say to writers who might want to join Gsfwc but are very new to workshopping and might be a bit scared of loads of, oh no, come back.
Oh no.
Oh, no.
The question wasn't that bad.
Yeah, like she's so scared she's run away. And might be a bit scared of loads of experienced writers. Like, how do you welcome people with less experience?
Carry on. Yeah.
Okay, I was just going to say, usually for the first time someone comes along, they're kind of there to observe and see if it's for them. Critique and criticism of your very personal work is not for everyone. And that's part of the reason that first session is to come along, meet people, kind of see what the atmosphere's like, and see if that's what they want.
Yeah. And
then they get invited along to the pub as well. They can chat to people and find out a little bit more. And that side of things is a little bit more difficult now, moving online. But because you're online as well, you get more of a chance. You can talk to people on Twitter or Facebook and things like that if you want to as well before you go along.
Yeah. And Damien's actually kind of added to that. Like Meg, I know we have a bunch of other questions, but this one goes with it. Damien says, I'm in the US. Would I be able to join virtual groups, or do you have to be Glasgow based? Oh no, everybody's going. Neil's frozen as well.
Oh, Beth.
Everyone come back. There we go.
Oh, okay. I think it might be.
Sorry, I didn't hear that question, Esther.
So Damien was asking
froze
whether
for me
you
and
actually
it's
have to
frozen.
be. Do you have to be Glasgow based to actually join?
Sorry, you have to repeat that again.
Oh no,
I've got a bit of
technical
a
issues,
connection
please
glitch at
stand
the
by.
moment. So, can
So
you
we
repeat that
were-
one again, sir?
Yep, of course. Yeah. So we were talking about what it was, how you welcome new people to the group,
Yeah.
and what you'd actually recommend for somebody who might not have joined. And there was an adjoining question for that, which is, if you're not Glasgow based, are you able to join the group, or is it Glasgow writers only, whatever that means?
Well, it depends how not Glasgow based you are. We honestly, our preference is for meeting in real life. We have members who live down on the Ayrshire coast. We have members who come from Edinburgh, who come from up the side of Loch Lomond, Stirling, those kind of areas. They're all commutable, and they're all willing to commute for it. We haven't discussed yet, and we probably should at some point, whether if we do continue as a partially online entity as well, whether that means we should then open up to writers from other places who wouldn't be able to communicate to commute to Glasgow.
Yeah.
We have sorry, Damon, we haven't discussed that yet, and I can't give you an answer to that. One of the issues is that we kind of have is you sometimes reach a point of critical mass with the number of people you've got, and it becomes difficult to schedule. There's a kind of happy number of operating writers who are actually working at any one time. So it's something we'd have to consider, the pros and cons and ups and downs and so on carefully.
Yeah.
But if we do make that decision, then we will announce it. So follow our socials, and you never know.
And do you have any more tips for new writers to the group who?
I think Cameron covered it really. Yeah,
okay.
the new writer thing is really come along, drop in, see, get a feel for what we're like, both in the critique scenario, but also in the social scenario as well. So yeah, I think that pretty much covers it. We do tend to. I would say we tend to be quite kind with our initial crits until we get to know you.
Yeah, once you've been there for a few years,
knives out.
Yeah, you can just turn around and say, Neil, no.
You absolutely can, and I'll
yeah. I appreciate that. So a completely different type of question, which I think is great. You're going to have to think on your feet, I'm afraid. So Helen asks, now I know an answer to this, but I want to know your answer. What location in Glasgow do you think might be a portal to another world? Now, there is a short story about this in one of the anthologies about a map. But yeah, so where is the portal to another world, and what world is it?
Well, I mean, if we're talking about the one that was discovered by our writer LCWK Donald, then that would be the subway station little thingy in the middle of St Enoch Square, which is a brilliant building. It's sort of I don't know if it's full Victorian or if it was Victorian or Georgian. It's got that very classic Glasgow red sandstone look about it. But yeah, that's definitely a candidate. For me, the portal for me was the Hippo Bar, where we first did the Hippo Tap.
Right.
Oh, that is, yeah.
We first did Death in the Afternoon down there, which was a little event we put together where we read to each other and drink beer. and that was fun, but then it shut, so that portal has closed. Somewhere else will open. They're always opening and closing, that's all I can say.
Yeah, fair. Sorry, I have a delay on the questions, so I'm just so what about the rest of you? Where's the portal? Where's the portal for you?
Traditionally, if you're a West Ender, traditionally it always used to be the disused train tunnel that goes under the Botanics.
Mhm.
It runs under the
Oh.
Botanics
yeah.
from Mary Hill.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm
Well-
not saying there ever was a unauthorized circle expedition into those tunnels, but I'm not saying there wasn't either.
I didn't know about that. That's awesome. I mean,
Well,
not
that's
the
'cause we didn't
expedition,
tell
which
you.
obviously never
Yeah.
happened.
And then there's various secret tunnels under Glasgow as well.
Mhm.
There's tunnels under the Glasgow Royal Infirmary. There's tunnels under Buchanan Street. There's the Melander
George
Burn,
Square.
which runs under Duke Street. Yeah, there's all sorts of secret places.
Yeah, there's a nuclear kind of fallout type, strong fortified type place, and they've got tunnels under George Square and that kind of thing that connect all those things together.
Mm.
I've come into the station
Allegedly,
a couple of times, and there's a tour that starts in the station
yeah.
that does a kind of underground, and they're always telling people to put hard hats on every time I go past.
Yeah.
So there's clearly some low bits down
Mhm.
there. So yeah.
Well, the tour, the underground part of the tour is the village that used to be there. It's it's not the village. It's the bit they built on top of the village. I don't know if you can actually see remains. I don't know. I have to go in it sometime and find out.
There's a tunnel that was the platform,
Yeah.
and they
Yeah.
just built another
Yeah.
platform right on
Yeah.
top of it instead.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
Brighton
that thing
Station
that one
has
does,
the same
yeah.
one. So
That's
yeah,
what it does.
Brighton Station has the same. So it's really, really kind of fascinating kind of architecture stuff. Yeah.
Mhm.
So for me, one of the last times I was down by what was the SECC and now is the SEC, I was walking along the river, and I can't walk for very far, and I had to sit down, and I sat down, and there was some coins beside me, and it wasn't just 2 or 3 coins. There were like 4 or 5 dozen coins, different money, different currencies.
Mhm.
And it wasn't stuck down, it was just there. And somebody walked past me and put a coin down and walked on. It was just money. It was just really, yeah. And again, I think, you've touched on this sort of that slightly weird experience. And yeah, and I got up and I found a coin and I put it down and kept going.
A wise
Exactly.
course of action, because that was
Yeah.
definitely a very
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Like leave something just in case.
Or it's a thing that one guy did and everyone else has been really impressionable, and ever since,
Yeah.
well, he's doing it, so I should do it as well.
no,
Well,
definitely the fake, definitely the
Well,
fake.
there was
Yeah,
a little
definitely.
yeah, I
Definitely
think there was a kobold in the bushes that was like, it's mine now. So D asks, do you have any suggestions for Grimdark books by local Glasgow region authors? I think D may
I don't know.
give you a leading question.
Yes.
So thank you to them.
Yes, D might hold a few of my books. Then would you say Mike Cobley's
Mike Cobley's Shadow Pines books,
trilogy?
his
Yeah.
first trilogy, yeah, very dark, yeah. That's a good shout. Obviously Cameron's as well. He won't do so himself. He won't self promote that boy.
No, totally not.
But yeah, the Traitor God and its sequel are excellent, big fun. Lots of nasty things happen.
I like big magic and big monsters. What can I say?
Yeah. Okie dokie. Right. I think we're kind of we're sort of coming towards the end. I think I'm not seeing any more questions coming up. So I'm guessing I'm trying to sort of think a really sort of good way to close, because when you were sort of talking and saying, it's not just about publication, I'm kind of a little bit little bit shy on asking you whether or not you've got anything kind of coming out, but I think actually if there is anything you would like to talk about, and I know all of you have mentioned kind of recent things, and I've mentioned some of them that I've read as well. Yeah, like what would you like to tell people about your own writing, or anything that the Writers' Circle is doing at the moment? Beth.
That
that was the pause of who.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's nothing I am writing that is imminent to come out, so I will just say go to Speculative Spaces podcast to hear all these folks talk in great depth about lovely stuff to do with speculative fiction, and I will be going to FantasyCon on Friday, and I hope to meet a few people there. And if you are a writer or a person in the industry and you want to plug something, just come and find me. I look like this, or maybe I'll get my hair up, but the green thing is what I usually wear somewhere. You'll probably find me. Find Neil if you don't find me.
I'll point you in the right direction.
So I'm told we've got another question, but I can't actually see it because it's not coming through on my WhatsApp. So Neil, let's go on to you, and then Cameron. And hopefully
Okay.
this question will arrive as a final moment.
I'll be quick. I've got a few things.
No, you don't need to be quick.
Okay, well, I've got a few things. So there's let me see. There's a story coming out in a new anthology called No More Heroes. It's coming out from PS Publishing quite soon, I think. It's an anthology of genre-ish stories inspired by rock stars we have loved and who have passed on too early. So I wrote a story for that based on one of my heroes, a guy called John Lord, who used to play for Deep Purple. He used to play the Hammond organ for Deep Purple and other bands. So that's coming out. I've got 2 stories coming out in the new Parsec magazine, which is edited by Ian Waits, in issue 2 and 3, I think. And in January, I have a novella coming out called The Packet, which is a weirdy space opera, which starts off in 1920s Glasgow, and is about diaspora and why you leave places and what you hope for when you go to other places. And then I've got a novel, which is The Queen of Clouds, which is coming out in April.
Just a few trifling things then.
They've been backing up, Esther. Nothing for a while, so they've been backing up. But these are things. Queen of Clouds and The Packet is something I'm looking forward to getting published quite soon, for a while. So I'm really looking forward to that coming out. That's coming out from Stone Owl Publications, which is an offshoot of Shoreline of Infinity. That's their novella line. So
yes, who should you wish to look at previous events that we've been involved in, please go back and look at some of the amazing stuff they've done. So yeah. So Cameron, and I do have one last question. It's a good closer, so I will use it.
I'm more or less just coming down from finishing off deadlines for Maleficent 7, and then all the kind of PR launch stuff around that. And yeah, COVID really did a number on my kind of creative writing and new things as well. So I'm more or less just trying to get my mojo back, and fortunately it seems to be back, and the writing's starting to flow properly again.
excellent.
Yeah.
So I'm looking forward to writing all new things.
Fantastic. Yeah. And the weather's on the turn. I think, like, the new ideas you always get from, as I say, I love autumn in Glasgow. So Ruth, who again some of you may be familiar with, has asked the silly question that I'm going to finish on before we.
Oh dear.
Here
we go.
So they're asking, how about other online things you have going on, like #WriteTober and Inktober, hint.
That's a good point, isn't it? This is a creative initiative that was inspired, or came from Jenny Coots, who was the artist who did the cover of Flotation Device. And the idea is there are a bunch of prompts if you actually do not have a link, if someone can find a link, if you find the Writer Circle Twitter, we'll stick a link on there at some point. But the idea is there's there's a bunch of prompts, and you can basically make any kind of art you like to these prompts. If it can be something, a piece of short writing, like a piece of flash fiction, it could be a poem, it can be I think Meg's found blank, hasn't she? It can be a drawing, it can be a piece of art, anything you like, and it's just to get those creative fires going and get you producing again. If that's something you feel you need an inspiration and a bit of a little fire, a little bonfire under you, and October's the month for doing that. So thank you, Ruth, for reminding us. Clearly we all forgot about that.
Yes, heavily hinting.
I'm ashamed. I'm black affronted.
You could have just said online D&D, Neil.
Could have done. Didn't want to.
Yeah.
Good one.
Ask me about my research speciality.
What's your research speciality?
So Beth, I think I've already asked you, haven't I? Talking about being at FantasyCon. So yes, so brilliant. Okay, well, we are ending a little bit early, but my back is starting to give out, so I'm going to be selfish. But also just to sort of close up, just to say thank you. This was really lovely. Genuinely really interesting, and I feel like I was excited to go to Glasgow tomorrow, and now I'm even more excited. And yeah, what a kind of lovely thing to have done on this evening as well. I feel really kind of invigorated by that. So in terms of the anthologies, as I said before, flotation devices is not available at the moment, but
not currently.
Not currently, but 30 Years of Rain is. It's on the Kindle and it is not expensive, so you should go and buy it. I think it was a really weird price. It was something like £2.32 when I bought it. It's got a sort of weird offer on it at the moment.
Awesome.
And also check out Cameron, Beth as EM Faulds, and Neil through their work. And if you're at FantasyCon, go and find. Are you there as well, Cameron? Or
no, I'll be home writing away.
Me too, unfortunately. But yes, and thank you so much. So our next event is on a very fortuitous day. It is on the same day as the Battle of Hastings and my birthday. Yeah.
Awesome.
And if you didn't know when that date is, because, why would you? It is the 14th of October, and so it's going to be at 7 p.m. and it will be Glasgow Presents Folk Horror and Dark Fantasy with Striga Books. And if you've seen The Witcher more than once, maybe 3 times.
You're just talking about the bats, aren't you?
Then you will know what a Striga is, because it's one of the episodes when Henry Cavill gets absolutely covered in fake blood. But they are also, Striga Books are also a small independent Croatian bookseller. So we're kind of continuing with our sort of wonderful indie theme. And my writing, I've got a doctor's handwriting. It looks like it says toilets are on Eventbrite soon. Tickets are on Eventbrite soon. So you'll have to use your own toilets, I'm afraid. Sorry, everybody. But also keep your eyes out on social media. We'll announce that when it's all up and it's kind of ready to do. And as usual, you'll also be able to watch live on Facebook if you don't manage to get a ticket. In terms of Glasgow 2024, please volunteer. Volunteering can mean being on a panel, or it can mean being behind the scenes like Meg is, making sure everything is going okay, or being like Ruth and asking pertinent questions. They all work on, or have worked on, our promotions team and are absolutely wonderful. Even if you don't end up doing something straight away, get yourself on our database and we will have your name on a list. And if that isn't for you, because volunteering isn't for everybody, then just give us some cold hard cash. We love pre-supports, we love supporters, and all of that detail is on, is a good list to be on. Yeah, the danger list, but it's also, volunteering is amazing. I mean, obviously, I love it. but yeah, please do consider supporting us. It's the money that we get before Worldcon that enables us to put this kind of event on, even just, you know, to sort of pay for our Zoom, but also kind of produce our publicity material and do all our bits and pieces. And it preloads the money that we can spend on the convention as well, because boringly, it means that we'll have an idea of what the size of our budget is. Are we going to be hanging an X-Wing from the ceiling, or are we just going to have a little Airfix one, you know, that kind of information. So yeah, please do consider supporting us, and stop it, chat. And you can find us on Glasgow2024.org online, or hashtag #GIN2024 as well, and also on our Facebook page, which is super active. We've got a series about Scottish castles and their relation to science fiction and fantasy, as well as our gaming and board gaming series that is running on the blog at the moment. So and yes, the cold hard cash link is in the chat as well. But yeah, so thank you everybody. Thank you Cameron, thank you Beth, and thank you Neil, and thank you for watching. And I sound a lot less like the BBC, like the kind of RP that I do in the introduction, where I look like I'm in the middle of a pandemic. So thank you all of you, thank you very much.
No, thank you.
Thank you, Esther.
And good night. So yeah.